Hey folks, Don here. In this video I'm going to talk about my use of diet to treat my psoriasis. And I'm going to cover the effects of both the hypercarnivore diet and what's happened since I have been eating a vegan diet. What has happened to my psoriasis since I started the vegan diet. So let's get into it. Back in the 1990s, my first wife, Rachel Albert, and I were eating a macrobiotic vegetarian diet. And although the diet had helped me overcome seasonal allergies, I didn't get sustained relief from a decades-old psoriasis lesion that was on my sacrum, except when I ate a very restricted, unsustainable diet that emaciated me. To get help, we went to Stephen Brink, a Chinese medicine physician in Royal Oak, Michigan, and after a few months, during which I followed a treatment plan that included a vegan macrobiotic diet, acupuncture treatments, and Chinese herbal medicines, that major skin lesion that had plagued me for decades healed up completely. I was so relieved and impressed that I decided to go to school to learn to practice Chinese medicine myself. I have been a national board certified traditional Chinese medicine physician since 2007, and since then I have helped others manage and heal psoriasis and other skin conditions using appropriate herbal formulas. However, I've not really applied my herbal medicine knowledge in a sustained way to my own condition. I've wanted to find a way to heal myself and others, if possible, of this kind of condition without using herbal medicine. I was on the right track with the vegan macrobiotic diet approach, but I made mistakes that set me back. Without going into great detail, I failed to find the right balance on the vegan macrobiotic diet. And that, along with social challenges and stresses of being a vegan and a macrobiotic in a non-vegan, non-macrobiotic family and culture, led me to fall for modern materialist evolution theories of animal-based nutrition, namely the so-called paleo diet and hypercarnivore. Despite the fact that I initially adopted a vegetarian diet in the 1980s, primarily to upgrade my moral and spiritual development. I didn't really start a photo documentation of my attempt to heal my skin until April 2017, although Tracy and I had eaten a strictly whole foods plant-based diet between about 2011 and December 2016. At the time of these photos of my ears, we had been on a mixed pseudo-Paleolithic diet for 4 to 6 months. My diet was high in animal corpses, fruits and vegetables, and I was avoiding grains and legumes for the most part. This chronometer entry from April 12, 2017 shows what kinds of things I was eating around that time and that I took those photos. The diet was built around animal corpses, as all pseudo-paleo diets are, along with fruits and vegetables. I had, on that day, 147 grams of mostly animal protein, about 2.6 times the recommended intake, or RDA, and the macronutrient ratio was 23% protein, 27% fat, and 47% carbohydrate. Back to the photos, notice that both ears appear red and inflamed, as well as having the dry, cracked, and flaking area that was my main concern and focus. That's where the discomfort came, the itching and flaking. I will show that the red, inflamed appearance remained so long as I was eating an animal-based diet. I've noticed many people asking why people who eat animal-based diets appear so red in the face. Traditional Taoist medicine has an explanation. Ayurvedic medicine does as well. All of Taoist science is based on the fundamental principle of yin and yang, complementary dualism. Without going into great detail here, it's an empirical fact that plants have more yin qualities and animals have more yang qualities. For detail, pause the video and learn from the information in these tables. Every component of one's body is formed from the food that one eats. When one eats large amounts of animal corpses and blood, one takes on the heat and redness of those materials. Simply, animal corpse eaters turn red because they eat food that is by nature red, in the red spectrum of coloration, and warming. Conversely, people who eat only cooling fruits and vegetables tend to become pale and cold unless they find other ways to maintain yang qualities. Taoist and Ayurvedic medicines both consider the body to be a manifestation of the mind. Eating animals makes both the body and the mind more yang. This means that corpse consumers tend, there are not always, but tend to be both mentally and physically more aggressive, combative, ruled by hot emotions like anger and lust, self-indulgent and materialistic. By the way, it's interesting that we typically depict demons, including the alleged archdemon Satan, as having red skin. And hell is commonly conceived as a place where demons, or a demon, are eternally barbecuing the flesh of dead people. In the Mahabharata, dated to about 5,000 years before present, people who eat animal corpses are called rakshasas, which means flesh-eating demons. Psoriasis typically presents as an inflamed or red-hot and angry kind of condition of the skin. According to traditional Taoist medicine, this means that the patient has heat in the blood. The heat is trying to escape through the skin. This is caused by exposure to yang influences, particularly eating animal corpses and greasy, spicy foods, and undergoing emotional stress. Exposure to fire and smoke, such as smoking cigarettes, could also contribute. Since rich foods stress the gut and the liver and gallbladder, these organs are typically compromised in cases of psoriasis. A Taoist medical approach would start with removing yang foods from the diet, as I did when under the care of Stephen Brink. However, I allowed myself to be bamboozled by the materialist evolutionist claims that humans are evolved to eat an animal-based diet and that all so-called diseases of civilization are caused by eating foods unavailable to Stone Age hunter-gatherers, particularly cereals and legumes. Let's face it, most so-called educated people today believe that Western materialistic science is the epitome of human intellectual achievement, and anything else is at best pseudoscience, if not ignorant superstition. Taoist medicine is commonly described as woo-woo by people who have never actually studied it and literally know nothing about it. Because they don't understand the conceptual framework and its vocabulary, they dismiss it without investigation, which indicates lack of intellectual integrity. These people are not educated, they're indoctrinated. Their so-called education did not expose them to multiple points of view. It gave them one doctrine alone and dismissed all alternatives as heresy, just like any other dogmatic religious indoctrination. Most educated people worship false gods at the temples of Western medicine, despite the fact that this allegedly superior and scientific, so-called scientific Western medicine is the third leading cause of death in the US, with half of those killed by properly prescribed scientific drugs. And Western medical doctors have one of the highest suicide rates of all professions, indicating that the practice of Western medicine increases the risk of the most severe form of mental illness. The drugs and surgery are deadly, and many of the doctors are mentally ill, suicidal substance abusers. What could go wrong? Despite all its bravado and pretenses, this so-called scientific medicine has not even proven itself less harmful than the time-tested traditional medicines, let alone superior, and the Western system does not occupy some moral and scientific high ground from which it can judge alternatives as ineffective and dangerous woo. I'm ashamed to say that I fell under the spell of the Western paradigm, particularly its demoralizing, just so, dog-eat-dog survival of the fittest, evolution by random mutations and natural selection creation story, even after observing and understanding its deadly character and directly experiencing the benefits of and choosing to get fully trained in a time-tested, truly scientific, holistic, and morally and practically superior alternative, traditional Chinese medicine. Having gotten deeply drunk on the evolutionary diet, meat made us human Kool-Aid, in May of 2017, I embarked on a stupid, corpse-based hypercarnivore diet, very low in carbohydrate and high in fat. After 6 months on that very low carbohydrate, high fat diet, the dry, cracked, and flaking skin in the left ear was dramatically improved, surprisingly, and the right ear appeared to have no dry, cracked, and flaking area. However, both ears, you'll notice, have a very red and inflamed appearance. Although at the time I erroneously attributed the remission of the dryness and flaking and itchiness to the diet alone, in fact, there were two other confounding factors. One was that I was taking artichoke extract every day to ensure that I had adequate bile flow to handle the high-fat diet. In fact, sometimes I got severe discomfort due to fat indigestion in spite of taking the artichoke. Bile acids act as detergents and can protect the gut from endotoxins by splitting them into non-toxic fragments, which prevents an inflammatory response in the intestines. These authors reported that 79% of patients treated with bile acid therapy were relieved of their psoriasis within 8 weeks with no other changes, such as dietary changes. Since artichoke extract increases bile flow, the partial remission of my psoriasis during this hypercarnivore diet phase may have been due to the daily use of artichoke extract and had nothing to do with the low carbohydrate, high fat diet. In fact, since evidence indicates that the diet high in red meat and saturated fat alone would be expected to increase endotoxin exposure and intestinal permeability and inflammation, causing so-called leaky gut, it is highly probable that the artichoke extract therapy was more responsible for the remission and probably was preventing a worsening of skin condition on the high-fat diet. It's also important to note that during the first 6 months of the hypercarnivore diet, I lost a significant amount of body fat, reduced my weight to 145 pounds from around 155, and my waist circumference got down below 31 inches for the first time since I was less than 20 years of age. Therefore, I was in an energy deficit for those first 6 months on the high fat, low carbohydrate diet. I had previously had dramatic improvements in my psoriasis while in an energy deficit while on a vegan, macrobiotic, whole foods, plant-based diet. Since I had previously had the same kind of improvement in skin health while eating an energy-restricted plant-based diet, probably the energy restriction played an important part in the improvement in skin during the first 6 months of eating the hypercarnivore diet. Just simply weight loss is anti-inflammatory. This is what I ate on December 3rd, 2017, the day I took the photos of my ears. It was similar to what I had been eating for the previous 6 months. Primarily animal corpses, eggs, and milk products, more than 225 grams of animal protein and 190 grams of animal fat per day. This diet, which in Chinese medicine we would call a very extremely yang diet, was 32% protein, 60% fat, and 6% carbohydrate. I was eating about 4 times the recommended intake for protein. Remember, I had to take artichoke extract daily in order to digest that amount of saturated animal fat. After another 9 months on the hypercarnivore diet, I regained 5 pounds of body weight. The skin of both ears in these photos appears red and inflamed, and the inner area is dry, cracked, and flaking on both ears, especially the left ear. My condition was still too yang, or becoming more yang because of the extremely yang diet. The reversal of the improvements that I saw in the first 6 months on the hypercarnivore diet give me more reason to believe that the improvement that I had in the first 6 months of the corpse-based diet was mostly due to the combination of the artichoke extract, energy restriction, and weight loss, and had nothing to do with the fact that I was avoiding plants. At this point, I was trying to control the condition by eating an even more restricted diet, often eating only corpses, milk, and eggs with no plant foods at all. On the day before I took these photos of my ears, I ate only cattle corpse and whole milk yogurt. I was still consuming more than 200 grams of animal protein and 178 grams of animal fat per day. All the carbohydrate was from yogurt. The diet was 32% protein, 60% fat, and 7% carbohydrate. During the period when I ate like this, I started having major problems with muscle cramping, which I discussed in my video on why I quit carnivory. Following advice of low-carb diet advocates, I attempted to correct the cramping by eating more salt. That didn't help the cramps much, if at all, but it did give me another problem, which was swelling of my feet in the evenings. I'll say more about that later. Since the attempt to exclude all plant products caused me to suffer debilitating muscle cramping and swelling of my feet, by 2019, I reincorporated fruits, increased my milk and egg intake, and reduced my meat and fat, particularly red meat. In these photos, both ears are still visibly red and inflamed, but somewhat less red than when I wasn't eating the fruits. And only the right one has the dry, cracked, and peeling area. This diet had a better balance of yin and yang factors, or heating and cooling factors, moistening and drying factors. The fruits and dairy being cooling and moistening, counterbalancing the heating and drying effect of the animal protein. On the day that I took this photo, I ate cattle corpse and milk, chicken eggs, gelatin, orange juice, grape juice, honey, and coffee. I was down to 150 grams of animal protein, or 50 to 75 less than I was before, and 136 grams of animal fat, and my carbohydrate intake was now up to 182 grams per day. So the macronutrient ratio was 23% protein, 48% fat, and 29% carbohydrate. In 2020, I was occupied with helping my parents and took no photos of my ears. My mother died in July 2020 and my father in December 2020. In January 2021, I resumed taking photos, and as you can see, the skin in my ears was still looking red and inflamed with some flaking despite eating cooling fruits daily. And I should say that I was still taking artichoke extract on a regular basis. Also in 2021, the problem of swelling in my feet in the evenings became more pronounced and persistent. 6 days before I took these photos of my ears, I recorded this in Chronometer. Now I don't have exact dates on all of these because I don't enter my meals in Chronometer every single day. I do it intermittently, sometimes going for weeks without it. I just picked the date that was closest to the day that I took the photos. That day I ate turkey and chicken corpses, chicken eggs, cow milk, yogurt and cheese, fruits and juices, and a single piece of sprouted whole grain rye bread. I was still consuming more than 150 grams of animal protein daily, but that was, as I said, 50 to 75 grams less than I was consuming on the hypercarnivore diet without any fruits. And I had reduced my fat intake now by about 50% and increased my carbohydrate to 40% of energy. By mid-2021, the problem with swelling feet had become more pronounced and persistent and captured my attention more than my psoriasis. As I discussed in my video on why I quit carnivory, after gathering more information from Western scientific sources, as well as returning to my traditional Chinese medicine training and connecting some dots, I decided that I needed to reduce animal protein intake further to fix the edema problem. Through 2022, I shifted toward eating a far more plant-based diet. First, it was a mixed plant-based diet, so I included some corpse material, and then I transitioned to a lacto-vegetarian diet. And I wasn't paying much attention to my skin condition, as I said, because I was focused on addressing this circulatory system issue. By reducing my animal protein intake and increasing my consumption of whole grains and legumes over the course of a year, I was able to reverse the circulation and edema problem. So that taken about the same time of day, a year apart, these two photos show that the one on the left, taken in 2021, August of 2021, I was having the edema problem frequently, like 5 nights a week. And by August 2022, it was basically a thing of the past. In October of 2022, Tracy and I visited Calder Dairy Farm to see how the animals are treated there while in the production of the milk products that we were using at the time. As I explained in my book, my ebook that's available on my website, Carnism versus Libertarianism, after seeing all the animals in cages, the calves separated from their mothers and the male cattle marked for slaughter, I decided that I could not continue to use animal products and still consider myself an advocate of freedom and anarchy. So we became ethical vegans in November of 2022. During the first 6 months eating the strictly whole foods plant-based diet, I was having problems with gas and bloating, which I've had before, and the psoriasis in my ears did not improve. It might have even gotten a little bit worse, although I don't have any photos taken at that time. I resumed studying Ayurvedic medicine and began applying its principles to my condition. According to Ayurveda, I have a physical constitution that's dominated by the Vata dosha, which consists of air and ether elements. And this produces a tendency toward dryness and wind. So what you ask, what's wind in the human body? Well, of course, wind is your air going in and the air you release from your intestines. We often say passing wind, but also in Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, itching is a symptom of wind because it has characteristics similar to the wind that we experience in the so-called external world. Since many beans, of course, increase wind, people with a predominance of Vata dosha tend to get excessive wind and dryness from consuming beans, particularly the larger beans that are harder to digest. And Ayurveda recommends that people who have a Vata condition or constitution reduce or avoid beans, certain types. In my case, I found that there were two factors primarily responsible for the excessive gas and bloating. One was the ground flax seeds that I was eating every day to get omega-3 essential fatty acids. I was still kind of hostage to the idea that I should eat everything in its whole form, and if I didn't, I was doing something wrong. Well, when I removed the whole flax, through experimentation, I found that if I removed the whole flax seeds from my diet, that brought considerable relief from the gas and bloating. Second, as noted in Ayurvedic medicine, I just found that I just do not do well with large beans, particularly the ones from Phaseolus family, such as kidney beans, pinto beans, and black turtle beans. They're just the hardest on my digestive system. And in the past, when I did plant-based diets, I ate a lot of beans from that family. As mentioned, according to both Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, beans are drying. Now, I believe that this may be due in part to their particular fiber composition. Beans are very rich in soluble fibers that bind fats in the intestines. It's possible that bean fibers may bind up essential fatty acids in the intestines, reducing their bioavailability, which could cause essential fatty acid insufficiency for some people if the diet is also very low in fat. And when I started during the first 6 months or so, 3 to 6 months of resuming the whole foods plant-based diet, I tried to eat a very low-fat diet, again following previous preconceptions I had about what is the optimal whole foods plant-based diet. But with the combination of restricting dietary fat to less than 15% of calories and having all these fibrous foods, my skin got drier. So people who have a Vata constitution, as I said, tend to have dry skin and hair, so they actually may be a subset of the population that has a somewhat higher essential fatty acid requirement, and therefore they would be more susceptible to increased skin and hair dryness, especially on diets that are very low in fat and high in fibrous foods like beans that bind up fiber or fats in the intestines, reducing their absorption. It's just a hypothesis, but it fits my own experience. Anyway, after thinking all this through, I made several changes to my diet. First, I stopped entirely using whole ground flax seeds, and I replaced them with, horror of horrors, flaxseed oil, which has no fiber, and hemp seeds and pumpkin seeds, which are lower in fiber and they don't affect me the way that flax seeds do. Secondly, I reduced my total intake of whole beans of all types. Third, I ate more soy products, such as tofu and soy milk and TVP, which I tolerate very well and are generally recommended for individuals with a Vata constitution. Fourth, I shifted to mainly using smaller more digestible legumes as staple in my diet, including chickpeas, lentils, mung beans, peas, like green peas, split peas, and aduki beans. After making these changes, my digestion improved and the skin in my ears was better than it had been at any point when I was eating the animal-based diets. My diet had become more balanced, and you can see here that the skin is less red, less dry, and less flaking in August 2023 after roughly 10 months of a whole foods plant-based diet than it was in January 2021 when my diet was based on corpses and fruit. And the skin was better than at any other point on the animal-based diet. Particularly the redness is dramatically reduced. That indicated that my internal condition had shifted from an excessively young condition, too hot and dry, with hot blood, to a more balanced state. The same can be seen in these photos of my left ear, which historically, the left ear was typically, but not always, worse than the right. You see less red, less dry, and no flaking. The improvements that I have seen on this vegan, whole foods, plant-based diet are consistent with the reports in the conventional medical literature. In this review of research on nutrition and psoriasis, Kanda and colleagues found evidence that saturated fats, simple sugars, red meat, and alcohol all promote or worsen psoriasis through multiple pro-inflammatory mechanisms, including gut dysbiosis, while omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, vitamin B12, short-chain fatty acids produced by colonic flora, dietary fibers, probiotics, selenium, and genistein from soybean products all suppress inflammatory pathways, regulate the immune system, and suppress psoriasis. Based on this research, my vegan, whole foods, plant-based diet is optimal for promoting healing of psoriasis because it contains no red meat or any meat at all, no animal corpses, nor any alcohol, is very low in saturated fat and sugar, and number one, it is rich in omega-3 fatty acids from hemp, flax, and pumpkin seeds, soy products, and green vegetables. 2, I get plenty of vitamin D from sun or supplements. 3, I get plenty of vitamin B12 direct from microbes, the microbes that produce it, packaged in nutritional yeast, fortified soy milk, and a supplement. 4, I consume plenty of dietary fibers that feed my colonic flora, which in turn produce anti-inflammatory short-chain fatty acids. 5, I get large amounts of selenium, mostly from whole wheat and soy products. Whole wheat is one of the best dietary sources of selenium. And 6, I get large amounts of genistein by eating soy milk, tofu, tempeh, or TVP at almost every meal. As I already mentioned, there is evidence that psoriasis is a bowel disease that may be partially due to liver and gallbladder dysfunction and impaired bile flow due to a high-fat animal corpse-based diet. Although during my hypercarnivore days, DAZE, when I saw some improvement in my skin, I regularly took artichoke extract to enhance bile flow so that I could digest the very high-fat meats. When I returned to a whole foods plant-based diet, lower in fat and saturated fat, I thought I might not need this, so I basically stopped taking the artichoke. However, the author of this clinical report treated his psoriasis patients with a low-fat plant-based diet and supplements of bile acids and bioflavonoids. Since bile acids control bacterial growth in the intestines, I decided to resume regular use of artichoke to see if I could further improve my digestion and my skin condition. During the later months of 2023, I resumed using artichoke extract and citrus bioflavonoids regularly, though not every day. And after about 18 months on the whole foods plant-based diet, my digestion is even better. And the skin condition is as good, if not better, than it was after the first 8 months. Despite the fact that I have been hypercaloric and gaining weight since January of this year. So I've been gaining weight, and yet the skin condition has not only not gotten worse, it's probably gotten better. Here, the right ear is a little bit more red than the left, but both are far less red than when I was on the animal-based diet. On the day that I took these photos, I recorded this in chronometer, which represents my typical diet, consisting of whole grains, legumes and legume products, vegetables, seeds and seed oils, and fruits. Yes, the dreaded seed oils. I typically consume 1 to 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds, 1 to 2 teaspoons of flaxseed oil, and up to 2 tablespoons of pumpkin seeds every day, so that I ingest about 2 times the estimated adequate intake for omega-3 essential fatty acids. Besides the improvement in my ears, I've also seen some improvement in the scalp. Although the back of my scalp has always been the area mainly affected, when I ate animal-based diets, the flaking area always expanded, advancing toward my front hairline. Since adopting a well-balanced vegan diet with adequate essential fatty acids, omega-3 essential fatty acids in particular, and regular use of artichoke extract, the dry flaking area affects a much smaller area, mostly localized to the back of my head again. The itching is generally reduced, and the flakes are smaller in size and in total volume than when I was eating a corpse-based diet. As I already mentioned, there is evidence that psoriasis is a bowel disease involving poor bile flow, and I have had benefits from using herbal therapy, including Chinese herbs under the direction of Dr. Brink, and artichoke extract. At this point, I'm inclined to believe that some people, including myself, may not be able to fully heal some conditions with a whole foods plant-based diet alone, but will also need specific professionally prescribed herbal therapies as well to correct the inflammation, tissue and vessel accumulations and congestion, infections, and organ dysfunctions caused by eating an animal corpse-based diet for many years. Dr. Eli, the conventional medicine physician who wrote this paper, found that his psoriasis patients needed to use a multi-pronged therapy, including pharmaceutical, nutritional, and herbal medicines, in addition to a low-fat, plant-based diet. These included antibiotics combined with probiotics to correct small intestinal dysbiosis. Well, there are herbal medicines that act as antibiotics. Avoiding emulsifiers, alcohol, and peppers to avoid exacerbating leaking gut. Bile acid therapy to correct bile deficiency and destroy endotoxins. As I said, artichoke extract acts as bile acid therapy without ingesting the bile of another animal. Citrus bioflavonoids and quercetin to prevent endotoxin absorption. And curcumin from turmeric to suppress elevated skin phosphoryl kinase associated with hyperproliferation, which is causing flaking and itching. And milk thistle herb extract rich in silymarin to heal the liver. So as I mentioned, when I was under the care of Dr. Brink and obtained healing of that original lesion I mentioned on the sacrum, I took herbal medicines that have antibiotic effects, enhance bile flow, heal the liver, and have general anti-inflammatory properties. Since I still have this issue on the scalp at the time of the release of this video, I am currently taking probiotics and citrus bioflavonoids and artichoke extract, creating a program similar to that used by Dr. Eli. I may use other herbs or supplements if I deem it necessary to facilitate the healing process. All in all, I'm really sorry that I spent years following the bogus materialist theory of evolution and eating animal corpses, ultimately making my skin condition and general health suffer by not applying the knowledge of universal principles that I gained from studying traditional Taoist medicine and macrobiotics to my own condition. It seems that I had to learn the hard way that one can't relieve one's own suffering by inflicting suffering on other innocent creatures, not in the long run. I hope that by sharing my experience, someone else will avoid making the same mistakes and be spared the sickness that one gets from eating a corpse-based diet. That's all I got today. I'll see you in the next video.